to introduce himself.
Thanks. And I'm a professor of digital humanities at the University of Glasgow, and I've been involved in different ways in the imaging of manuscripts and archives since the early 1990s. And the focus of what I want to talk about in introducing myself is very much around manuscripts and archives. So the emphasis is maybe slightly different to some of the things we've already talked about. I cut my digital teeth on the electronic Beowulf project in the 90s, which compiled an image archive illustrating the transmission of a celebrated Old English poem. And the idea was that in presenting a multifaceted view, which comprised, on the one hand, a straightforward imaging of the manuscript, on the other, a variety of shots under a number of different specialist lighting conditions, also digitization of early transcripts and collations. We wanted to get across through images the idea that this is actually a very complex text, and our understanding of it is very complex, and to some extent the way in which it's almost impossible to come up with a final settled text. And we felt that that idea of an image edition had a lot of power. So I was very excited when I first learned about IIIF, because it seems to me offers the opportunity easily to create this kind of image edition offering a multifaceted view of the history and reception of a text or document, which previously needed an enormous amount of time and resource. Certainly an enormous amount of resource has gone into the Beowulf project over the years. But IIIF at a first point offers enormous savings in terms of time and money and enhanced sustainability. But that would be enough. But the excitement of IIIF seems to me goes beyond that, because ever since I first got involved in dealing with digital images, I've been interested in seeing how far we can create new forms of scholarly dialogue which directly incorporate and address the artifact and are not dependent on textual descriptions of the object. If you look at any scholarly discussion that involves paleography, you'll immediately be confronted with masses of a highly technical textual description, which actually convey very, very little, even to those who are quite expert, about the nature of the object being described. And you, as soon as you confront that, you immediately think how much easier it would be if somehow that was simply rooted in images. And IIIF offers that possibility. The annotation potential of IIIF offers the prospect of creating a new form of scholarly communication, one which for the first time can place the object firmly in the center of the discourse. But it seems to me, and we've touched on this a bit already in the first half of today's event, that we've only taken quite limited steps to consider what a collaborative scholarly dialogue would look like and how it would fit in with the other things that we're interested in. What I'm interested in is very interested in different to what David's interested in terms of addressing the Congolese comics. And so that requires a different sort of dialogue and a different sort of structure. And I'm not sure, I think we've tended perhaps to think too much of crowdsourcing as a single object in relation to IIIF, and not thought about different types of audience and different types of use sufficiently. And here I'm very specifically interested in the possibility of creating, through the use of IIIF, collaborative descriptions, which might involve 5 or 6 medieval paleographers working on a single manuscript, and then giving you a variety of different views on the evidence for that manuscript. I think IIIF can offer us those sorts of richer perspectives. Now, I've undertaken some limited experiments myself on this, and particularly fascinating, one of my favorite sites is the Polonsky Foundation's website of early Anglo-French manuscripts from the British Library and the Bibliothèque Nationale de France. And that offers a lot of possibilities. And I've found in looking at one particular group of 10th century liturgical manuscripts that actually using annotation and comparison and IIIF, I've been able to work towards a different view of the relationship to the manuscripts. And I'd love to be able to publish that as a IIIF piece. But it hasn't been possible to do that because it seems to me there are still some severe limitations using IIIF as a platform for publishing a piece of research like this. So I'd want to conclude in pointing to, it seems to me, the three main problems I worry about, and then use the last one of those as my piece of advice. First is the problem that as soon as you start to undertake any scholarly research, you find that the availability of the manuscripts that you want to use in IIIF format is incredibly patchy. You immediately almost come up against a key manuscript that you want, which isn't in IIIF form. So while two vital manuscripts from the British Library, the Bibliothèque Nationale de France, are available on the Polonsky site in IIIF form, there's a third that's very key to this discussion that isn't available in a IIIF form, even though it's on the British Library's digitized manuscript site. So I find that kind of patchy implementation of IIIF is a real problem in terms of the user perspective. It gets particularly frustrating with happens with smaller archives, I've tended to notice, where the manifest has sometimes been deliberately crippled in order to limit what you can do with it. And it seems to me that's very much almost against the spirit of IIIF. My second concern is that we tend to have only single views of material in libraries, and it will be helpful if we had more multiple views, and particularly views under, for example, multispectral lighting conditions available for some material, because then we could even more effectively exploit the possibilities of IIIF for comparison in all sorts of interesting ways. But my third, and I think my biggest issue, so it's the one that I would have as my piece of advice, I've already alluded to, is how we shape and make available for download the discussion around particular artifacts. It's not a single conversation, it's not a single function. And the way in which annotations are made available and controlled across different implementations of IIIF makes a lot of different assumptions about the type of audience and purpose that the annotations are being used for. It seems to me it would be helpful to actually, certainly one should think carefully about how the annotations are going to be used before you do that, but it would also be helpful to have a wider discussion about a more consistent approach to dealing with the availability of annotations. Thank you very much.